was able to see Novocaine at its world premiere in Austin, Texas, where I was able to work the red carpet, interview Jack Quaid as well as the directors. It was a very cool experience. The next day, then we headed off to NASCAR, where Jack Quaid kicked things off. So it was a very cool weekend. But what did I think about the movie? Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. What did you think about Novocaine? If you haven't seen it yet, what's your excitement level? As for me, this is a movie I was extremely excited to check out as soon as I saw the trailer for this film. I grew up on mid-budget action films. I love just this genre, action comedies. And over the last 15 years or so, we don't get as many of them, and it feels like it's making a little bit of a comeback. This year in particular, we're getting a lot more of these mid-budget action films, and I am absolutely here for it. I love to see it. So when I saw the trailer, I was excited for it, and then when I got the invite to do the press junket, I was even more excited because this is the type of movie I like to talk about with the creators. But did the movie live up to my excitement? Let's talk about it. And I'll cut right to the chase. I had an absolute blast with this movie. The basic premise is that there's a guy that can't feel pain, and because of that, he kind of lives a very isolated life, because when you can't feel pain, you don't know when you're injured, and that's incredibly dangerous. So he's always lived this very shy, protected life. So he meets a girl that finally gets him to kind of start to come out of his shell and open up and experience the world. She gets kidnapped, and he decides to use his inability to feel pain as a superpower to go and try and track her down, thus leading to a non-stop series of just these wince-inducing, gnarly, gory things that he does, where he's injured, he's burned, he gets glass in his hands, all sorts of crazy stuff happens to him, and you see this gnarly violence as he's trying to save her, and it absolutely worked for me. But what's even more important and more interesting than that is that my wife, who does not like gore, really enjoyed this film. That it's funny enough, it's romantic enough, and it's designed in a way that it kind of disarms the fact that you're seeing violence. And the directors actually talked about this a little bit.
That is music to our ears, because that is sort of what our intention was. You know, the tone of this film, there's obviously a lot of heart and there's a lot of humor, and we were hoping that those would be sort of softening elements to the violence that there has to be. But, you know, we never wanted the gore to be gratuitous or off-putting for any audience members. We want this to be like a big tent movie that anyone can come and see and leave the theater feeling better than they came in. And we do think that the sort of humor inherent in Nate, the fact that he can't feel pain in the face of all of this gore and horrible violence, it does allow audience members that maybe are a little more queasy about violence to sink their teeth in and still have a great time.
I had this conversation with them the day after I saw the film, and like hearing them say that, it was like, yeah, you succeeded at that. You made a movie that is really, really gory. Like, it is very detailed in showing just this nasty burned hand and all sorts of injuries. And like the whole movie, the theater was going, oh, oh. And even in the Q&A afterwards, Jack Quaid was joking about, oh, I love making movies that make audiences go, oh, 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 the whole time. That's what this movie does. But because he doesn't feel pain, you kind of remove the element of seeing a person suffering out of it. And you don't, like, when you have a person, like, you know, being tortured and their hands cut up and they're screaming in agony, you respond one way. And when the person's joking about it, when it's played for laughs, it just kind of disarms some of what makes gore and violence off-putting. But kind of just breaking down the different pieces of the film, at its core, you have to buy into this romance. And what they do a really good job of is making you understand in a very efficient manner just how lonely our lead character is. And Jack Quaid is able to play kind of this innocent everyman really well, that's a nice guy that also feels like he lives in his little bubble. And very efficiently, without needing a ton of screen time, they make you buy into the fact that he cares about this girl, and there's a connection there that you believe in, that the journey that he's been on, that's led him to this day in his life, and what she's done in his life would cause him to do something pretty ridiculous. It's very effective at doing that and making you like them and want to see more. And this is another one that got a little bit interesting because you're watching the first 20, 25 minutes of the movie, and you're basically watching this almost a straightforward rom-com.
The action wouldn't work if you didn't care about this relationship, because that's the thing that Nate's trying to save the entire time. So we really made sure to rehearse those scenes. Like, I rehearsed those scenes in that rom-com portion, you know, just as much as I rehearsed all those action sequences, just to make sure we dialed that in right, and also left it open to spontaneity and improvisation. But it was really surreal because we shot that more or less in sequence. We shot all the romance stuff in the beginning. I basically just kind of thought I was making a rom-com for a second, you know, and then one day it was like, boom, bank robbery, and every day is a stunt day, and it just became a different movie. But it was so rewarding to do every second of it. It was amazing.
But then, of course, it is an action movie, and the thing that makes it pop is that, you know, of course you have the gimmick of a guy can't feel pain, but that dramatically changes what the action sequences are like, because it's not a trained guy that knows what he's doing. The whole point is he's clumsy and doesn't know what he's doing. And you just get a series of these little sight gags in the way that it's handled, but the action is shot differently. And one of the things that the directors talked about was one of their biggest influences was the movie Upgrade from a few years back, where basically a guy had like a chip in his head where this computer would take over his body. It was like AI version of the movie Venom. Came out the same year as Venom, and it's a much better movie than Venom. But like, it had a very specific choreography because this guy's body was controlled by the chip. The guy couldn't control his body. And they unpacked why that movie would be a specific inspiration for this film.
Upgrade has a shtick to the combat. You know, it's a character who's not in control of their body. You know, the chip is controlling what he's doing. And so that was kind of it's hard to find references for something like that. And we needed that with Nate because there's a shtick to our combat too. He doesn't know how to fight. So we had to develop our own sort of, you know, fight language, our sort of Nate Fu of like this flailing survival combat, you know, where he's just doing anything he can, grabbing anything he can. And we built that with the stunt coordinators.
Yeah, it is really similar because in Upgrade, his face is doing one thing, his body's doing another thing.
Right,
and so there's a very similar thing happening here where it's not quite that Nate's body's doing one thing and his head's doing another. It's just that there is a disconnect where he's not flinching when he's being punched. And so that's something that Jack had to, you know, really work on and learn. And that's something that with our stunt coordinator, you know, they had to practice that. You have to kind of unlearn having to flinch after every punch.
I think I'm so used to doing other stunt sequences where they really tell you to sell the pain every single time. You know, that's also like a natural human response, you know? Like you get hit in the head and you're like, oh, like you have to, in every movie or TV show, you have to do that. But for this one, I had to resist that kind of natural response and just, you know, trying to figure out how to fight like the character. That was the biggest challenge of this movie. Like if I get punched in the head, my head's gonna move, but I can't react.
That juxtaposition creates comedic moments in Upgrade, just like it does Novocaine, you know, and in that kitchen scene when he's just grabbing plates and being like, oh shit, I'm so sorry, you know, that's so funny. And that was when we realized that if you do it right, you can hit those comedic beats really well.
So it just made it so you have action that looks different from anything you've really kind of seen. And it has a sense of humor that likewise is something fresh and new. Like some people saw the trailer and they just went, oh, it's just Kick-Ass. First off, Kick-Ass came out 15 years ago. So like, it's not like we're ripping off something that just came out or this is this super common trope. The movie came out 15 years ago and it's a totally different story. It's a superhero movie. The nature of how much this guy can't feel pain is radically different between the two characters. It's like the most basic and simplistic of similarities that go, there's nothing beyond the basic concept of a person that doesn't feel a lot of pain. Beyond that, the execution is totally different. Even in the choreography, the way they use that for humor and as a superpower, whatever, totally different. So I think that comparison is actually rather silly. But the movie keeps finding just the right sight gags, just the right ways to have him do something that makes you freak out a little bit, but likewise, how he starts to use his body as a weapon because he doesn't feel pain and all this stuff that's happened to him. It's very interesting, it's fun, and it keeps delivering. You know, this movie's not trying to be the biggest, boldest, the greatest movie of all time. It's not a pretentious film at all. It's a movie made by guys that loved old 80s and 90s action comedies that wanted to make a new one that had just a fresh and new enough spin to it. And I think that's exactly what they did. As someone that loves all of the movies that they listed as influences, I think they did a good job of delivering a new one that has enough elements that I haven't seen before, even that it's a more amplified love story. It's not unusual to have a little bit of romance in an action movie, but this one treats it as a rom-com until it turns into an action movie. And that rom-com thing is really important to drive everything that kind of happens forward. And while it's mostly very straightforward, it is a film that has a few twists and turns in there. There's a lot of kind of the nature of the movie is hidden in the trailers. They left it to be a surprise when you watch the film. And so there's just enough to add emotion, to make you care about the characters, the choices they make. You laugh, you grimace quite a bit, and you actually buy into the central relationships. Even like there's a friendship kind of going on where Ned from Spider-Man, he's back, and once again he's the guy in the chair. he's like playing the same character in the same role to this other guy. I guess he's fine with that because he took on this role, but he's very much just doing Ned for Novocaine. But it works. It's enjoyable. Of course, the other big negative here is that our lead actress is the lady that was in Prey. And so once you've seen her kill a predator, you know, it's tough to imagine her getting kidnapped, and it's tough to imagine her being the damsel in distresser that would have any trouble killing anyone, because I've seen her defeat a predator. Anyway, that's more of a joke, but it is interesting. And but she's playing such a different character that, like, if you didn't look at her IMDb page or whatever, you wouldn't realize it, because here she's playing this charming person that gets this guy to come out of his shell and is doing practical jokes on people and stuff like that. So it's also really fun to see her in there. The standout here, the movie works because Jack Quaid is great. He's so funny. He's so charming. The movie overall delivered everything that I wanted out of it. But you also have to keep in mind, I just love these types of movies. This is my kind of movie. This is my thing. That, like, what do I put on late at night? I put on movies like this. What did I grow up with? I watched movies like this. So you have to take my score in the context of who I am and what I love from movies. But I also just think it's a good one of these movies. The people that don't necessarily have as much of a thirst for them as I do, this is one that you'll have a good time with. My wife being the perfect example of that. It's not really her thing, in particular because it's so gory and violent, and she still absolutely had a blast with this. As soon as it ended, my wife started clapping. She was the first to start clapping. She goes, "That was hilarious." She ran out to the bathroom while the credits were running, and while she was doing that, she bumped into Jack Quaid, where she's normally afraid of celebrities, but she enjoyed the movie enough that she went, "Oh, that was great." And he's like, "Thank you. Thanks so much for coming out and watching it." As it turns out, Jack Quaid is the nicest celebrity that I've met. Quick little thing to throw in there, but the movie itself, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Overall, it's an A- on the entertainment scale and 8.5 out of 10. And go see it in the theater if you like action movies. Hey, maybe the score's a little bit elevated simply because this is my kind of movie, but it's a really good one of these movies that I think a lot of you are going to have a lot of fun with. And if you want more mid-budget action movies that are original to be made, go see it in the theater. Have a fun time with it. Go on a date night or whatever. It's a fun movie.